Can Zhen Huan, blessed with both beauty and talent, truly outshine all in the imperial harem and enjoy everlasting favor? By February, the days had gradually lengthened. With nothing much to do all day, I served in the Empress Dowager's palace, copying Buddhist scriptures for her. The cold of winter had not yet passed, and the branches of the trees outside the hall were laden with thick remnants of snow, often accompanied by the faint sound of breaking branches. The cold, clear light of the snow shone through the gauze curtains, casting an extremely pale shade of blue, reminiscent of the thin glaze of fine June where porcelain or the moonlight of someone's 17th or 18th year. Although beautiful, it was a beauty tinged with desolation. The clear light of the snow passing through the large windows papered with white translucent paper left a pattern on the ground similar to the moonlight of mid-autumn. Despite the cold and silent colors, it made the hall seem much brighter inside than out. Perhaps because of Xianling, the Empress Dowager treated me quite well, though she was always quiet and not fond of speaking. I served by her side, careful not to speak too freely. Time always passed silently. Often, the Empress Dowager would kneel and recite scriptures in the inner hall, while I would copy the text word by word behind her, finding the Sanskrit quite uninteresting. The Baoshan incense burner on the desk burned with sandalwood, its smoke silently curling up in thin wisps. She seemed serene as if in another realm, her expression as ethereal as the smoke from the burner. I quietly asked, "Does the Empress Dowager also like sandalwood?" She replied, "Those who follow the Buddha all use sandalwood. It's not about liking or disliking." She glanced at me slightly. "The ladies of the inner palace rarely use this incense. How do you come to know of it?" "I sometimes light it to calm my mind, finding it better than the rest incense." The Empress Dowager smiled. "That's good. It's inevitable to encounter displeasures in life. Knowing how to ease them is important." The Empress Dowager's eyesight was not very good, and she often found it difficult to read the small text of the Buddhist scriptures. Therefore, I wrote the characters larger and in a square style, which she indeed liked. However, perhaps due to the Empress Dowager's calm nature, her liking was always subdued. Only occasionally when she glanced over my writing, she would comment with a faint smile, "The writing is graceful but lacks a bit of boldness. Still, it's quite good, considering your young age." Just a few casual remarks would make my face flush with embarrassment. I was quite proud of my handwriting, having once collaborated with Xianling on a scroll of Qianguan's Magpie Bridge Immortal. His whispers tickled my ear. "Your writing, like a dancer among flowers, rises and falls like lotuses. It's like a beauty stepping onto a stage, a fairy casting shadows. It's also like red lotuses reflecting on the water, or clouds floating over a green pond." I turned away, chuckling. "It's not that good. The Empress can write with both hands simultaneously. I am no match for her." He was lost in thought for a moment, then simply smiled. "The Empress's handwriting is indeed good, but its strict correctness somehow loses its charm." "So," I cheerfully said to the Empress Dowager, "the Empress's handwriting is very good, capable of writing with both hands." The Empress Dowager merely smiled indifferently and quietly gazed at the winter plum blossoms blooming alone in the corner of the hall, slowly turning her prayer beads in her hands, and said leisurely, "The fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. Even the finest handwriting requires diligent practice and cannot be achieved overnight. The Empress spends a considerable amount of time practicing her calligraphy every day." I suddenly remembered visiting the Empress's palace to pay my respects, where I was surprised to see a thick stack of paper filled with her writings on her desk. "So much writing, how long did it take the Empress to write all this?" I asked in astonishment. Qian Qiu replied, "Her Majesty hasn't written much these past few days. This is the work of 3 days." I was secretly shocked and fell silent. It seemed that, lacking Xuanling's favor, the Empress spent her long, quiet days practicing her calligraphy. "The foundation of Zhen Jieyu is not bad," the Empress Dowager commented. She slightly opened her half-closed eyes and said with a smile that was not quite a smile, "But since gaining favor, you've probably rarely picked up a pen." I couldn't help but blush, my voice as faint as a mosquito. "I am ashamed." However, the Empress Dowager smiled kindly. "It's hard for young people to sit still and focus on writing properly. It's inevitable that the Emperor prefers your company, and neglecting your calligraphy is not a big deal. Whether the emperor likes it or not doesn't depend on the quality of your writing. The Empress Dowager treated me well, but her words made me respect and revere her even more. Sometimes, when Xianling stayed in my palace, I would find an opportunity to gently persuade him to visit the Empress more often. He would just laugh it off. My Huan is so generous. I had no choice but to say, the Empress is the mother of the nation, and your Majesty should not neglect her too much. As the weather gradually warmed up, people were no longer lethargic and unwilling to move, and were willing to go out and about. One morning when I went to pay my respects to the Empress, I could hear the continuous sound of laughter and chatter from the hall as soon as I entered the palace gate, indicating a lively and harmonious atmosphere. Upon seeing me, the Empress smiled and beckoned. "You're here too. We were just having a lively conversation." I hurriedly smiled and said, "Indeed, the sisters were so happy that their laughter drew me here from afar." I noticed that Huifei was seated at the easternmost seat below the Empress, and Feng Shui was on the west, with a row of concubines seated below them. Lingrong seemed to have lost even more weight, blending inconspicuously among the radiant and splendid concubines, hardly noticeable. I approached her with concern and asked, "You haven't been well lately. Do you feel a bit better today?" Lingrong replied, "Thank you for your concern, sister. I'm much better." Before she could finish, she coughed twice, turned away to blow her nose, and then sheepishly smiled. "You must find it amusing, sister. It's just a cold, but it's dragged on for so long without improvement." Her voice was nasally and no longer as clear and melodious as before. Due to catching a cold, Lingrong had not served Xianling in bed for over half a month. Instead, it was Chun'er, with her straightforward and simple nature, who had attracted much of Xuanling's attention. Chun'er said with a giggle, "Sister Zhen is only looking at Sister N and ignoring me. I'm your sister too." I couldn't help but laugh. "Indeed. You are naturally my sister, and aren't we all sisters here? Please forgive your sister this time." This made everyone laugh. Chun'er pulled up her sleeve to show me, saying, "I've gained weight again recently. Look, sister, the clothes made for the new year are already tight at the cuffs." I held back my laughter and counted on my fingers. "Yes. For breakfast, you had 2 bowls of red rice porridge and 3 sugar-filled pastries. For lunch, stewed fatty chicken and duck until they were tender. And you even had snacks before dinner. If I hadn't stopped you at dinner, you might have finished the entire bowl of stewed pork knuckles with ham yourself. Despite that, you were still claiming to be hungry and had a late-night snack." I tried my best not to burst into laughter. "It's not about affording the food. It's just that your stomach is getting rounder." At first, Chun'er was just listening blankly, but as I listed all her meals, she finally realized, blushing and stomping her foot. "Sister loves to tease me." She looked down at her brocade robe embroidered with peony in pink and gold. "But you're right, I can't keep eating like this. The Emperor said I need new clothes made every 2 months, not because I've grown taller, but because I've gotten fatter. I'm really envious of Sister Anne's figure. She's always so slim." The Empress laughed. "What's wrong with being a bit chubby? As long as the Emperor likes you. Sister Anne might even envy your appetite." Then, looking at Lingrong, she said, "Being too thin isn't good either. You should take care of your health, even if you're on medication." As they were speaking, Tianguren, who had been listening with a smile, suddenly frowned, turned her head, and covered her mouth with a handkerchief to gag a few times. Everyone was startled, and the Empress quickly asked, "What's wrong? Did you eat something unclean for breakfast? Or are you feeling very unwell?"
Follow us to avoid getting lost and enjoy endless exciting stories. For more content, please go to the Story Wall homepage to view more exciting novels.